This is the WellSeeker Pro training for daily reporting, and this section covers the data entry during operations. If you haven't watched part 1 of this training, i.e. daily reporting job setup training, go back and do that before you come to this. So, in summary of what we covered in the first part, i.e. the job setup, we had verified all of our codes, i.e. activity, phase, and cost. We had verified we had the personnel and rig names in place. We then input the inventory. We'd gone into the drill string editor and input our first BHA prior to pickup. We then moved on to the daily report dialog and updated the well status standby, selected the coordinators, updated the well and personnel details dialog with as much information as possible, including the personnel on site and the time of shifts. We also input the daily activity and the pipe tally up to a certain stage. So where we're going to go is we're going to join back at the daily report dialog. So I'm going to select my actual well bore in question and go to the daily reporting toolbar and select the daily report icon. And as you can see, this is the stage we got up to, 0200 on our first day of operations, and we've picked up our BHA. The first thing you should do once you become operational is update your well status. Okay, currently it's at standby. We're now going to change the status to active, i.e. we are operational on this well for the foreseeable future. If at any point in the well you have a prolonged period where you're put on standby, you can go ahead and change the status back to standby. When you come to the end of well, you can obviously identify TD when you've TD'd the well, and when you have finished the well entirely, you can change the status to either complete, end well report ready, end well report sent, depending on what your company stipulates you change these statuses to. We are at the stage where we've picked up our BHA, we're changing the well status to active. What this impacts is when you send this information back to your coordinators and back to town, this will get added to a master database, and they will be able to filter wells and view wells based upon their status. So as a grand scheme where there are multiple wells being drilled at once by your company, it gives your management oversight of the status of all the individual wells. If your company are running a server-based setup, and you're pushing information back to the server rather than real-time data exchange, then this will update in real time as well based on well status. So important that you update this. As I mentioned just there, you do have real-time data exchange as an option if you're running a server database. This will be covered in detail in another set of training, but just to make you aware, this is the stage at which you would start sending data back to the server via the real-time data exchange, which can be accessed from this section on the toolbar, or within Tools, Real-Time Data Exchange. So we're now at the stage where we picked up BHA. Because we are drilling, spudding the well from surface, we will go straight into drilling operations. So what this means is I've just minimized my daily report there, and that can be accessed from the toolbar of Windows if I want to access it again. So this can be left open. I'm now going to open up my surveys. Once I've opened up my surveys, I'm going to select to open my slide sheet. So the slide sheet is effectively the area that you want to keep up to date. Don't worry about filling in the daily activity section of your daily report during drilling operations, because what we do within WellSeeker is you fill in the slide sheet, and then when you're ready to, you can pull the information from the slide sheet directly into your daily activity, effectively meaning you don't have to duplicate this data twice. So concentrate very hard on getting all of the information input correctly in the slide sheet, and your life will be made infinitely easier when it comes to your daily report. We're going to go ahead and look at some of the layout and options available with the slide sheet. So in the main section here, we've got the slide sheet details themselves, various columns of different inputs, and each row denoting an on-bottom event. We have a toolbar on the top with different icons that carry out different functions. whether that be to leave the slide sheet, undo and redo the last actions, save the sheet, print the slide report, display the motor yield, survey update email template, some width related features, the directional driller's dashboard, and then again slide analysis and send downlink are additional features that won't be covered in this training. If we go into the file menu, you can select to save and print various different reports. Undo and redo, the same as your toolbar menus to undo and redo the last changes you made to the slide sheet. In the view section, you can change which columns are visible on your slide sheet. So all the ones with a check are what's visible in my main display right now. You can include others or exclude some of the ones already visible. Another way of dealing with this is the slide sheet column order. This opens up a dialog, and again we've got an on-off checkbox, but unlike the previous display, you can move the column order up or down by selecting a column and moving it up and down. In the settings section, you can select a date format, whether that be day, month, year, or month, day, year. Widths surveys relates purely to widths, which isn't covered in the scope of this course. The slide report input, whether that be course length or end depth. So when it's selected, you input the course length, and the end depth is greyed out. If you have it unselected, then you input the end depth and the course length is automatically calculated. So whichever of those two you want to input. Copy drilling parameters to a new line, i.e. once you fill out these drilling parameters, once you create a new row, those drilling parameters will be copied and pasted to the next row automatically. The user can still edit that new row with any changes made to the parameters, but it stops you having to fill out duplicate parameters every single time if they're not changing. Also, auto-calculate ROP, you can have that checked or unchecked. Based upon your start and end time and your start and end depth, the ROP will either be automatically calculated if you have it selected, or not if you don't have it selected. These options here are related to widths input data, so they won't be covered in this course. Show surveys on slide report, show phase on slide report, and show short survey on slide report are options about what will display when you go ahead and print your slide report, whether it be to Excel or PDF. In the tools section, you can get to the motor yields dialog, which shows you your calculated motor yields based upon your inputs in the slide sheet and your surveys. Also from here you can get to the survey update email template. So what this is you can input a list of recipients to an email listing, and then once you've input their email address, you can add them. So I'll just do an example at email.com. You would add that to a list, and you can have multiple people on your mailing list. And then automatically generated is a subject line for the email and the email body. And this populates with information regarding your last survey and a bit projection based upon a straight line projection from your survey point. And the measured depth is calculated based upon the survey offset you have in your drill string editor in your MWD component details section. Once you've got that in a position to send, you hit send email. Other tools in here, these vast majority relate to widths related functions, which we're not going to look at in this particular training. Round depths, if you have a load of depths in here that are, say, instead of 100 foot, it's 100.01, you can go to the round depths and it will round them to the nearest unit. And the other function here is the directional driller's dashboard. Again, a lot of the functionality in here is tied into widths, but it also works off of your survey record, any offset wells that you have in place, and your slide sheet data. The directional driller's dashboard will be covered in more detail in a separate training video. So now that we've gone over some of the options around the slide sheet, we're going to go ahead and simulate our first day of operations. We are spudding the well, and I'm going to input the data for that. So in this case, I'll input my date. Start time was 0200, that's where we got up to in our daily report. 0220 is going to be the end time of our first drilling activity. So start depth is 0, and we're going to drill 95 foot. Again, I'm taking this information from the data set provided with this video. Weight on bit is 5,000 pounds. Flow rate 150. RPM 40. The ROP was automatically calculated because of our auto calculate ROP selection. Torque value is 2. And we don't have a pickup, slack off or rotating wing. Off bottom pressure and on bottom pressure. And we don't have a temperature value either. And I don't have any comments to add at this stage. So something to be aware of, a common mistake that people make is based upon the unit set that you have within WellSeeker. You already have predefined what your torque and weight units are. So in this case, 1,000 pounds and 1,000 foot-pounds. Something that's really common to see is that people are unaware of those unit sets, and instead of 5k pounds, they would put in 5,000, assuming that they're inputting in pounds only. So, and same for the torque units. So something to be aware of, that is a common input error. Be aware of the unit set that you've currently got selected, and make sure you input the values correct based upon those. I'm now going to save my data. So this has simulated my first on bottom event, i.e. the time I tagged bottom of the hole was 0200, the time I lifted off bottom was 0220, and the distance of new hole that I've created is 95 foot. So effectively, you should only ever fill in rows where you are changing the hole depth, i.e. your bit depth is irrelevant, your start and end depth should always be the hole depth. So for example, if you'd run a casing, you'd cemented, and then you come back and drill cement, the start depth and end depth whilst you're drilling that cement should be the same, because you're not increasing the hole depth. You're basically re-drilling a section. So I'm going to continue here in the vein that we are drilling fresh hole. Just going to delete this row, and if I then select one of these rows, go into the cell and move out of the cell, it will create the next row, and because we have copy drilling parameters to new line selected, it pulls the drilling parameters from the previous line into the next line. So it's filled that out for me. I'm now going to go ahead and use the copy and paste function from the Excel document I've got and paste information into the slide sheet. So I'll get my 2 rows, select the cell, and you can see my 2 rows have been pulled in. We're going to continue the simulation that we're drilling, so effectively we've drilled to 285 feet, and now we're going to input our first survey. Again, I'm going to the Excel dataset that I've got. To pull in surveys, you can either manually type in, you can copy and paste from Excel, or you can use the File Import Survey Data option. Once I've imported my surveys, I'll hit Save to save them to the survey program, and effectively the combination of your surveys and your slide sheet will be utilised in the DD dashboard to give an updated picture of where you are. Once you've got a survey, you can also open the Survey Update Email Template, or go to Tools, Survey Update Email Template. Same option, different places. You can now see the last survey details have been updated and a bit projection, which is based upon your survey offset ahead of your last survey. If you've pre-set up the recipients, Then you can just go ahead and click Send Mail. Microsoft Outlook will do its thing if that is your provider, and it will come up with a default email template, and you will have the survey report attached to the email. All the user then has to do is hit send. So on a survey by survey basis, you can have this pre-designated survey update option utilized if required. So this is how you would go through drilling a well. You'd effectively update your slide sheet and update your surveys and almost disregard the daily report until you actually needed to output something. But I'm going to go ahead and show you how you would update the daily report. So I'm going to go ahead, select the actual wellbore and open the daily reports. Go to my daily report toolbar and hitting daily report icon. The best way to drag information into your daily activity is hit the Get DDR from Run Sheet. Effectively, this takes all of your slide sheet data that you filled in and it pulls it into your daily activity section for you. So what we see here is our lines for drilling, and then we have a white line which denotes a time gap from our slide sheet. So where we had the gap between our first lines of 0220 to 0225, that has been added in as a white line, and it's been given the activity 5A circulate and a description of survey and connection. Where that information comes from is in the report options, set default activity code / description. And in here, effectively any time gaps in your slide sheet, when they're pulled into your daily activity section, they will be given this code and description by default. You can change that if you so desire to whatever you like. So bear in mind, by default, it will be survey and connection. If you did have an event, say like a rig service that lasted an hour, when you hit Get DDR from Run Sheet, it is still going to be given this 5A circulate survey and connection description. The user would then manually have to go and select an appropriate activity code and change the description. But in the majority of cases, during drilling operations, you don't have to do anything else. This tool, you could effectively leave this report all day until midnight and then pull that in, and if there were any time sequences in there for the gaps that were an activity other than survey and connection, you could update them then. Equally, you can hit the Get Parameters section and it updates your drilling parameters, again pulled from the slide sheet, and you can hit Calculate to update the information in the drilling summary section. I'm going to hit Save. And so effectively, I'm going to simulate continue drilling till midnight. I'm just going to go ahead and pause the video while I copy and paste in all the information for my slide sheet and my survey up to that point. So you rejoin me now. I have pulled in all the information for the remainder of the day of drilling operations. And actually, this slide sheet only goes down to 3:40 on the same day, so we don't even get to midnight. You can see a couple of new items here where instead of rotate drilling activity, we've got slide. And when you've got slide selected, the options to input an effective tool face, target tool face, and tool face type become available. Okay, you can select between magnetic and gravity for the purposes of reporting. Once you've got all the information in place, you can then save, minimize, and you'll also see that I've got in my surveys down to the end of that particular run. And I'm going to go back to my daily reports, and you can see we've got the information as we pulled it in last time. For your information, when you hit Get DDR from Run Sheet, it's only going to, it basically runs a check for the end time that you've reached in your current daily activity section. It will then only take information from the slide sheet from that time onwards and add it on. So it's not going to overwrite the data that's currently in here. So you can incrementally update your daily report if you so desire through the day. And when you hit Get DDR from Run Sheet, it isn't going to overwrite the existing stuff you have in place. So I'm going to go ahead and hit Get DDR. And you can see that it has pulled in the remainder of the slide sheet, not overwriting the existing data, and appended it on to the end. So as mentioned previously, we've only got a drilling activity down to 1540 when we came off bottom. So I'm now going to refer to my dataset, the DDR1 tab, and I'm going to manually input the information. So from 1540 to 1700, with BHA1 phase surface, activity is going to be 5A circulating. And I'll just circ as my description. Okay, next line, 1700 to 1900. Surface, phase surface, and the activity is 6B trip out of hole. Put in the description, and then 1900 to 2030. Still BHA surface, phase is surface, and the activity is 6P lay down BHA. Okay, and you can see this 6P is one of those codes that I said was essential for each BHA, along with 6O, and this tells the software where the start point and end point of your run was. You can see then the next line is automatically pulled my BHA and phase down to the next line. My last line will go 2400. My activity is going to be 12B run casing. And I'm just going to do casing as the description. So, something that's important to note is any BHA that's selected in the BHA column will have time and depth activities associated with each row for it's selected. So, for example, the casing operation, we don't have a BHA in hole, so we shouldn't have a BHA selected. In this case, I'm going to hit delete, and that removes my BHA selection from BHA column in this row. So right now we've got this filled out as far as we can tell correctly in terms of we don't have a BHA selected before pickup, but at pickup until the point of lay down we have the same BHA selected. In terms of the phase, we've got standby phase up until the point where we pick up, and then it becomes the surface phase. It's up to you and your company how you deal with the phases, but in our case the surface phase continues until you pick up the assembly for the following phase. So casing operations have been taken under this phase, and the activity is being selected correctly for run casing. So I'm going to go ahead and save my DDR right now. Another point to note is the end time is 2400. So start time is denoted by 00 and the end time 2400. Once we've updated all of our daily activities, we can also hit get parameters, and this updates our drilling parameters from the slide sheet itself. If we hit calculate as well, it updates the information here if this was out of date, and this is the stage now where you would start thinking about creating your daily report. We have some tools here to validate your data, and so the way of ensuring that the information is identical between your slide sheet and your daily activity section in the daily report is you can use these daily data validation tools. So we can check the activity against slide sheet, and this will verify any rows where there is a mismatch between your slide sheet and what's in your daily activity. In this case, everything matches. You can update the activity descriptions from the slide sheet. So your description here is made up for drilling activities of the drilled from and to, start and end depths. Your weight on bit, flow, RPM, pressure, all your drilling parameters are denoted in that description. And if at a later point someone has gone back, for example, and changed the RPM from the original 80 to, say, 100 in the slide sheet, if you hit update activity description from slide sheet, it will update the description from that 100 that is now entered in your slide sheet. If, for example, you have input an RPM on your slide sheet, when you have a slide activity, which there shouldn't be, you can hit this button. It will remove all of the RPM values from slide activities on your slide sheet. And again, if there are any depths where the start and end depth have been incorrectly input to multiple decimal places, you can hit round depths and it will change the depths and round them all off. I'm going to go ahead and save. Another tool you can use is in the main database tree. If you right click on your actual wellbore that you're currently reporting for, go to reporting and go to daily activity editor. Again, this is a chronological order listing of your daily activities. And we've only got one daily report in at the moment, but this will be one solid list for your whole Wells daily reporting data. So for example, if you had 10 days worth, this will just be one long list of daily activities. And it runs multiple checks for common inaccuracies in reporting data. So if we accidentally had the wrong information in here, it would flag up the row in red or the cell in question that's in red. So for example, if we put in the wrong depth here, okay, it's flagging this up because the end depth doesn't match the start depth on the next row. So that is what this tool is for. It highlights any obvious errors in terms of sequencing. Okay, so this is also a tool that should be used in conjunction with the data validation tools before you go ahead and sort out your daily reports. It should be done at least on a day-by-day basis. Once you've verified that all of the information in your daily activity slide sheet are correct and match, then you can go ahead and fill in your fluids and drilling summary information. So for example, drilling summary, pick up tools, service, 24-hour look ahead, and nipple up. Comments, you can put in whatever. And then for your fluids, you just put in your type. If you've got any mud viscometer readings, you can input them there. And then your PV, YP, weight, viscosity, temperature, gels, sand content, chlorides, fluid loss, pH, and oil-water ratio. Once you've got all this information in place, hit save. Something else that you can update periodically is as you drill deeper in TVD, you can update the casing. So select your actual wellbore in question, go to the casing table and update casing information. I'm going to go back to the data set, and there is a data sheet that contains the formation and casing information. And we have got at 100 foot, we've got a conductor, 20-inch OD, and we also have some lithologies. So again, select your actual wellbore in question and go up to the lithologies table. Our current survey record goes down to 3,802 TVD, so we actually only have one formation that we can pull in. I'm going to pull in based upon the true vertical depth, so that would be 2648.1. That is formation 1. Hit apply. Now what inputting the formation information does is within your daily report section, for the information that you've got, under this emblem here is the well statistics. So what that does is it takes your daily reporting information and it breaks down that information based upon the phase down into the BHAs, but also the formations. So for your formation, it will take your start depth of your formation from that formation table that we filled in, and once you get to the next formation, it will take that as the end depth, and it will then take your daily reporting information and create statistics for it. So by the time you finish this well, it will have itemized all the formations that you've drilled for and created some statistics for them. good to bear in mind updating your orthologies as you get those formation tops confirmed by the geologist. We are now at the stage where we've got a full day of reporting. Equally, we've completed a full run. So we're going to look at the options for creating your daily report and outputting a daily report. We'll also look at the reporting options for your BHA performance reports. To print your daily report, you would go to File and Print DDR. However, before you do that, you should be aware there are some report options specific to the DDR. If you go to Report Options and then Daily Report, this will include sections that are included in your main daily report page. So you can include a BHA detail, the surveys, drilling parameters, pump data, blood chemical usage, the daily costs, include MWD data, a sign-off section, and instead of the activity codes themselves, you can put an activity description, i.e. instead of 5A, it would put circulate in the BHA, in the daily report. In addition to these daily report options, we've got additional daily report options, and these effectively don't include sections in the main report, but add on other reports, so they're included in tabs or separate pages included in your daily report. So you can add your slide sheets, your cost reports, BHA, survey report, inventory summary, or well stats or tool tracking. So effectively you just select it and then that will be checked as an additional report that is created whenever you create your daily report. Other options affecting your daily report are your include all BHAs for 24-hour summary, affects how your 24-hour summary results are put together in terms of whether it only shows the last BHA of the day or whether it includes all the BHAs within that 24-hour period. I'm just going to go ahead now and go File and Print DDR. It's printed an Excel report. In this area, if you have a logo assigned to the operator, the logo will be depicted in this section here, and this builds up your whole report from what you've input within WellSeeker. So you've got a generalized section here with casing, as we filled in our casing table, fluids information, bit details, 24-hour and run summaries, generic well information. And because we selected them, it's also got our BHA details, survey data, our drilling parameters, daily costs, and then here is our daily activity section. So that is what the daily report looks like in Excel format. It can also be printed by going to File, Print PDF Reports, and Print DDR. And again, we get the same sections, but in a PDF format. One of the sections we saw in our report options for the daily report was pump data, which we haven't actually covered yet. So if we go to View and Pump Data, you can input pump data in this table, and that information will be displayed within your daily report. Also, one of the options within Daily Report was Include MWD data. If we have that selected and we go to Well Data, MWD Parameters, we can input an on-bottom pulse amplitude and an off-bottom pulse amplitude. The other information in this section comes from the drill string editor within the component properties for the MLWD component. So the plug-in date, plug-out date, and times will all come from there. With that filled in and the Include MWD Data option selected, that will then include that information within the DDR when you print it. Print DDR. And because we had the MWD information option selected, we will now have an MWD section within the report. So that is how the daily report options work. In addition to the daily report, we can also we have set up a morning report package. There are options again for this in this section here. We've got Include End of Well Report as part of the zip file. and Open Email with Morning Report Package. So by selecting this option, File, Create Morning Report Package, what it does is similar to the Survey Update email template. Microsoft Outlook, if that is your email provider, comes up with a default morning report template based upon the information that you've got in your daily report. Attached to that is a zipped folder containing a copy of your local database. Fold that over. A copy of your database, and also an Excel copy of your end of well report. Again, to determine what is included in your end of well report, you have end of well report options, and again a load of checkboxes for all of the various different reports available to create from the daily reporting dialog. In addition to our daily reports and end of well report, we also have a number of other reports. We can print off our BHA as we left it in the drill string editor. There is a company man's report, a number of different cost reports, tool and personnel tracking, tool utilization, shipping tickets, a copy of the slide sheet, personnel utilization, all in Excel format. In addition, you've got printing the same reports to PDF. We've already covered Create Morning Report Package, and you can also change the default background colors for the reports in Excel. So by default it's set to grey 40, but you've got a number of different options for how the Excel reports appear. We've covered how we would go about creating a daily report or a morning report package. We're also at the end of a run, so we'll look at how you get your end of run summary reports, and that is in the drill string editor with the performance reports. I'm going to go ahead and open up the drill string editor, and it takes me to BHA1. This takes me to my BHA. If I had more than one BHA, I would select it from the drop down menu and select the one in question. I would then go to the performance report icon or select performance report edit data. This will open up the performance report dialog, and in here it will have pre-populated some data from the daily reporting section. Options that we have available to us are printing options. We can add images, i.e. photographs of the BHA themselves to the report. We can get the data from our daily reporting, i.e. pull in a load of data to the daily report, attach files that aren't images, and get the MWD service system data. So if we hit get data from DDR, which is also on the main toolbar here, it populates any missing information that we might have and pulls it straight from the daily reports. If we also hit select get min average max values, instead of putting in the averaged values, next time we hit it, it will pull in a minimum, maximum and average value for all of the drilling parameters that we have. Once we've pulled in the information from the daily reporting section, we go ahead and save it. You would fill in any MWD data that you might have here. This is also where you would input any additional comments that you might have, whether that be for standard or MWD comments, and the reason for pull out of hole. So in this case it was section TD. Hit save. The MUD parameters get pulled straight from your daily report, and if you did have a failure on this particular run, you would log the failed status, whether it's motor, MWD, catastrophic failure, unplanned trip, or MWD operated out of spec, and you would be able to select the failed option and break down which components were the ones that were responsible for the failure and any MPT involved. Once you've filled in all of the relevant information for this run, you would go to File and print motor performance report to Excel or PDF. You also have the option of creating an incident or failure report if you filled out these sections, and also a charge pack report. Same again for MWD. Utilising the MWD information, it creates a separate report for MWD performance in Excel, PDF, and also an MWD failure report. Okay, so we can see how the run reports are made using the performance report dialog, and this is specific to each individual BHA. Once we've pulled information to the performance report, it will then update the depth in, depth out, date in and date out information in our main drill string editor dialog. It will also update any circulating hours and drilling hour inputs for our bit. Save and close. So we've covered the daily reporting and end of run reporting. A couple of other report functions that we haven't covered are in the toolbar on the daily reporting dialog. We've got KPI tracking graphs, and also we have a time depth chart. Okay, so very straightforward. Both of those KPI graphs and depth tracking graphs can be included in the end of a report based upon selection within the reports options menu. So we're going to push on now. We're going to simulate the next 3 days of daily reporting information. And I'm going to show you now how to, once we've completed this first day, we're going to add another daily report. So in our report options, we've got copy previous report, and we've got copy previous report costs selected. I'm going to hit plus, add daily report. It's warning me that the mud data is incomplete. Do I wish to create a report anyway? Yes. And also there's some of the drilling parameters that are incomplete. Do I want to continue? Yes. So it's copied over a lot of the information from the previous report, including blow rotary table hours, fluid section, and the drilling parameters. So I'm going to go ahead and save my report now it's in place. It's also in my daily activity. It's pulled over the previous day's BHA and phase. So I'm going to refer back to my data sheet that I have and look at the DDR2 tab. So first thing to note is we're currently undergoing casing operations, so I will not have a BHA assigned to that. And I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste information from my sheet. Again, you could manually type this in just to speed things up. I'm going to copy and paste. Delete this bottom row. And save. So I'm happy that my daily activity section information is correct. There's no BHA in whole, so we haven't got a BHA selected. Our phase is still surface because we haven't started the next phase yet. And our activities are pre-designated and look correct. Other things to check are, obviously, we've got drilling parameters in here that were automatically pulled over from the previous report. If I hit get params, it will update them based upon looking in this date criteria at our slide sheets. Now right now we don't have any slide sheet data for these dates, so when we hit get parameters, it's obviously cleared these out because there's nothing in there. It also cleared out the below rotary table hours for the same reason. Okay, comments. We're not going to put anything on this day because effectively we're on standby rate. The other thing we'll want to update are our daily costs. So in here we're no longer operating, our directional services are on standby, and we won't have a motor service in place, so this will be our one cost for the day. And again, that is not associated with the BHA because it's standby rate. If I hit apply, we can now see that our well total has updated to $26,000. Save the report. At this stage, I would also go and update the fluids information if there's anything up to date, and I would go ahead and create my daily report. We're now going to repeat the process and move on to day 3. Okay, and we have our third daily report in place. On this particular day, we're going to go ahead and pick up our second BHA, which is for the intermediate or tangent section. So first thing I'm going to do is open up my drill string editor. We've currently only got one BHA for selection, so I'm going to go ahead and add a new BHA. Now you can create a whole BHA from scratch, or if your BHAs are very similar, you could go ahead and use the Edit Copy BHA option. BHA successfully copied, and now you'll see that we've still got our original surface BHA. We've also got an exact duplicate of it called BHA1 copy. Go ahead and delete this BHA and go back to how we did originally. I'm now, for the sake of saving time, I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste in this drill string from the dataset. I've now gone ahead and updated my BHA. I've updated the BHA number, MWD number, mud weight, the depth in and out and date in and out information. The target formation is still the same, no comments. Last thing I've got to update is my BHA name, and I'm going to call this tangent. I've also, for each of the individual drill string components, updated all of the component properties as far as you can. Okay, now that we've got the BHA input prior to pickup, go back to the daily reports and add a pipe tally. I'm going to add, change the name to BHA2, and again copy all the drill pipe links from Excel. Input my BHA length, stick up of 3, survey offset of 65, depth per stand 3. Okay, hit apply, and that's the pipe tally saved. I'll go ahead and print this prior to going drilling. Once we've got that in place, we then need to either choose whether we're going to continue from the same survey table or whether we're going to create a new survey to go forward. In this case, we're going to create a new survey table. So I'm going to close this one, right click on my actual wellbore and insert new survey. And we're going to call these surveys to intermediate. We're going to tie them on from the surface surveys. It'll automatically select the deepest point, and we're going to have MWD IFR1 plus MS as the instrument performance model. Open up my surveys, we can see the tie on line here. So once we're back to drilling, we can now input a new set of surveys to a separate table for intermediate. Go ahead and hit save, and that will update the survey program. I'm going to go back to my daily report and input as much information for the day up to the point where I pick up my BHA. So I'm going to again go to my data set, go to daily report number 3, and I'm just going to copy and paste in the information that I have. So what you can see here from the information I've pulled in is first line is BOP pressure testing. Then we go ahead and pick up our BHA. So from that point onwards, I select my BHA2 as the BHA in hole. This again associates any time depth activity in the daily activity with that BHA from now on. I've also changed the phase from surface to intermediate. So intermediate is the phase that we're going to go forward with. We've also got trip in hole, and then we've got drill shoe track slash floats. So we're drilling the cement effectively. And as you should note, the start and end depth over this interval is exactly the same, i.e. we're not increasing the hole depth, we're just drilling out cement from the existing hole. So we're in a position very similar to how we were at the start of this particular video, where we've got everything set up to the point where we're going to start drilling. In this case though, it is a second BHA and a second section with a separate survey listing. I'm going to save my report, minimize the data report, and I'm going to when my surveys are selected, open up the slide sheet. The slide sheet, you can now see the selector has two slide sheets available. One for the surface section we've already filled in, and the second one for our new BHA. As I said before, the options are denoted by what you've got in your drill string editor. So I'm going to fill in the slide sheet for my second BHA going forward. Again, within my data set, I have a whole load of slide sheet data for BHA2, which I'm just going to go ahead and copy and paste in until midnight on my current day, i.e. the 3rd of July 2019. Okay, so we've pulled in all of this slide sheet information for the 3rd of July 2019, and it takes us down to midnight, as we can see. So at this point I could now go back to my data report, select get from DDR from run sheet, and all of my information from 7:55 onwards ties in with my slide sheet and has been pulled in. Point to note here is that at 15:10 in the afternoon we have a 15-minute time gap here, and this wasn't in fact a surveying connection, it was actually a rig service event. So we change the activity from the default that is given from our user selection to 8p rig service. And type in the description as rig service. You can now see that this line has been highlighted in red, and that is because any code starting with 8 is taken to be rig NPT, and any code starting with 26 is denoted as drilling NPT. So this has now been registered as rig downtime. I'm going to hit save, and effectively my whole daily activity section is now filled in for the whole 24-hour period. Again, effectively off the hit of one button. I'm going to hit get parameters, and then I'm going to fill in my 24-hour summary, update my fluids information, and double check my daily costs. And we're now in good shape. We've completed that particular day. Again, you go ahead, create your daily reports, and then go ahead, move on. We're going to move on to the final day. For the final day of our daily reporting, I've gone through the exact same process. I have input my slide sheet data. Okay, so I've gone from 2400 on the previous day all the way up to 0945 on our day of interest. I've also filled out all of the surveys down to the point where we stopped drilling, and for our actual wellbore I've updated the casing information and the lithologies. Once I've done that, I use the get DDR, get parameters to update the majority of the information, and then just updated my drilling summary information and my fluids where necessary, as well as the daily costs. The only points to note is in the dataset that I used, I created a scenario where we actually didn't finish the section at section TD. The MWD stopped pulsing prior to that event, so we now have some MPT tool codes for drilling MPT, i.e. starting with 26, that now attribute, when we look at the well statistics, some MPT hours to directional. Based upon this MPT time, we would now go to our drill string editor. For our BHA2, go to our performance report, get from DDR button, so it pulls in a lot of our information, and then we would have to go in and fill in a failure report. And we'd be looking at our component as being the UBHO, the MWD tool type as the pulsar. We tripped for the failure. It wasn't lost in hole, it wasn't a surface failure. It's an MWD failure, and it caused an unplanned trip. And the reason for pulling out of hole was MWD failure. You would then go ahead and from my datasheet I will pull in the information regarding this failure. I've now filled in all the information, and as such, if I now go and print my MWD failure report, pull it across, and now all the information that is relevant will be filled out based upon our inputs. So that is how you would deal with MPT and failures. Okay, so we have effectively drilled a well from start to finish. That is this operational phase of training complete. There'll be one further video covering the end of well and transition to another well on the same pad. Right now we're going to go to Q&A, followed by your exercise phase. Now for the questions section. As always, if you don't know the answer immediately, pause the video before you hear the answer and go and refer back to the video to find out the answer for yourself. Okay, so first question, what should be done once per shift to verify the data entered in the daily activity section is accurate? The user should use the data validation tools and the daily activity editor to ensure that the inputs match the slide sheet and to highlight any input errors. Next question. I pull my slide sheet data into the daily activity. Any time gaps between my end time and start time on the next row are being given an unexpected activity code and description. What is causing this? So the activity and code description for any time gaps pulled from the slide sheet are set by the user. So you can choose what these come in as. So if you're getting an unexpected activity code or description, then it's up to you to go and select what this should be. So in order to do that, in the Daily Reports dialog, select Report Options, set Default Activity Code / Description, and then within this dialog that opens, you can then check or adjust what activity code and description are put in these time gaps. Next question. Why, when I look at weight and torque values in the drilling parameters section of my daily report, do they look 1,000 times greater than they should? The answer, so the drilling parameters entered in the slide sheet should be in the units that you have selected in your unit sets. i.e. in the main user interface of WellSeeker, you've got your tools unit set menu, and you'll get a detailed breakdown of what every individual parameter has its unit set as. So if the weight and torque are selected as 1,000 pounds and 1,000 foot-pounds respectively, and the user inputs the parameters if they're pounds, i.e. instead of 5k pounds, they put in 5,000 in that cell, then that data has effectively been input incorrectly and will appear as such in the drilling parameters section of your daily report. Moving on to the exercise phase. So basically you'll be carrying out what I've done with the dataset. If you have other data available from your company that you can work with, feel free to use that instead of the dataset. But go through the same steps. So update the daily reporting for day 1. This includes updating the well status to active from standby, and then update the slide sheet, surveys, casing details, lithologies, update the daily report using the get from DDR function, and update the parameters, and then input remaining data that isn't automatically pulled across, things like your comments and your 24-hour summary, and then go ahead and use the data validation tools we've got within daily reporting to make sure that your reporting data is accurate. Then go ahead and print your DDR and the create morning report package function. Once you've done that, update your performance report in the drill string editor and go ahead and print off your run performance report. Then repeat all of the relevant steps in here for days 2, 3 and 4. Bear in mind that you won't have to do all of these for all the days. For example, day 2, there isn't any run data, so there's no slide sheet. During the whole of this process, please play around with the reporting options so that, as you can see from the video, there are lots of options you can toggle for things that are displayed in reports. Each company will have its definitive setup at the end, but it's very useful for you as the user to find out where these options are. So have a play around with those as you're going through this process. If at any point you become stuck with any of the stages above, refer back to the video for a refresher. that concludes the daily reporting operations training video.